guys, it's NickDiazOfNauts here. This is a podcast. This is the first podcast I'm doing with a video to it. So, hi. It's a little strange. Usually I am talking into my phone like this, or potentially even just talking into my microphone and no one's able to see me. So it's cool and strange, but also awesome and exciting, and not too different than my usual kind of day. You know, I stream on Twitch every day, hours on end, where people get to see me and how I move and the actions that I take and the words that I say. But the difference is that those kind of float up into the ether. They kind of just disappear. And if you were there, you saw it. Awesome. And if you weren't, you didn't. And you missed out on the gaming that we did, on the conversations that we had, on the moments that were shared together. So I think one of the cool things about a podcast is it kind of lives forever as a record of what was said, things that were done, and even to this day, podcasts that I've done 3-4 years ago are still getting listened to. As I used to be before I was a Twitch streamer, I was pretty much an amateur podcaster, using the Anchor FM app when it first released. For the first couple of years, which is where the whole Nick Diaz of Nauts started, and that later transitioned to Twitch, which is where my main thing is now. Anyways, I'm getting way off track here. This is an emergency podcast. As you know, I haven't done a podcast in a long time. If you're a long-time listener, fan of the stream, Oof Squad member, I haven't done podcasts in a long time. I've been focused on a lot of different things, creating YouTube content on top of daily streams, on top of breaking into Twitter a little bit now, on top of working my day job and making money and trying to live a life. But this is an emergency podcast. If you've been following me on any of the social medias, especially Twitch, and tuning into the daily broadcast, you obviously know what I've been talking about recently, a lot focusing on recently, which is the Trucker for Freedom Convoy 2022, the mandates that have been established across Canada, nationwide as well as provincial wide, and what's resulted from all of that. And I'm sad to say that we have hit a brand new low in Canada as of yesterday. Today is Tuesday, the 22nd of February 2022, otherwise known as 22222. First time ever, I guess. It's one of those cool days. 22222. And so yesterday the Parliament voted to approve Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act in Canada. The Emergencies Act, which is basically now renamed from the previously named War Measures Act. It's a lot of doublespeak, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but it's a lot of doublespeak with this stuff. It's like they just rename stuff, but it's the same, if not worse, than it was. But it has like a cute name to it. They almost like Disney-fied a lot of things. It's almost like the Department of Defense for America. It's not that it is the Department of Defense, but it's also the Department of War. Let's be real. It's the Department of War. But defense sounds way better, so let's go with that. It's similar to that, I feel like. The Emergencies Act basically gives the Prime Minister arguably dictatorial power in Canada. Powers including freezing bank accounts, arresting citizens potentially indefinitely, potentially without trial, proven now without bail, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But essentially, Trudeau has gained more power in the last 24 hours than any prime minister since World War II. Think about that. Currently, today, Justin Trudeau has more power than any prime minister in the history of Canada since World War II. I know that's not the history of Canada, but since World War II. The only other person in history since then, since World War II, that was prime minister, that had as much power as Justin Trudeau, but probably not as much, and I'll get into that as well, was his father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. And he invoked the War Measures Act, as I mentioned. That's what it was previously called. The War Measures Act in, I believe it was the 80s, about 70s, 80s. Forgive my ignorance. To deal with an actual terrorist crisis in Quebec, where a Quebec separatist terrorist group was kidnapping actual politicians and like holding them for ransom and demanding things of the Canadian government. And so Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, enacted the War Measures Act and put literal boots on the ground, armored vehicles on the streets, and ended up arresting and detaining, I have the number here, I had it here, 497 people. I was going to say 500, and then I was like, maybe it's 800. But 500 people, basically, arrested and detained. And that's one of the interesting things about these powers, is that even if you're not going to arrest and charge, because again, if you arrest somebody, you have to charge them with a crime, and otherwise you just have to let them go, which is known as a detainment. Usually, I believe in America, I'm not sure about Canada, but at least in America, I don't think they can hold you for more than 24 hours without charging you. I think that's the rules. I could be wrong. I'm getting way off subject here, but essentially, these powers are crazy powerful that Justin Trudeau, now has in Canada to deal with what he says is the great threat to our nation, which is the Trucker Convoy for Freedom that started about a month ago from British Columbia, the west coast of our country, and drove all the way to Ottawa and had basically a national protest against the vaccine mandates and a lot of other restrictions that have been placed on truckers and the rest of Canadians. Blockades were set up by different protest groups across Canada, in Alberta and in Windsor and elsewhere. That affected a lot of trade, affected a lot of business, and definitely as of Monday, when the vote happened yesterday, Ottawa had been cleared out, and I'll get to that in a second. The blockades in Windsor and Coutts have been removed, and relative order had been restored. Now, this is after an emergency, a state of emergency was declared in the city of Ottawa. So that gave them a certain a level of power to do things in that city. But really, I'm thinking the invocation of the Emergencies Act last week was the final nail in the protests' coffin, essentially giving the police and the government the powers that they need to, that they say they need to squash. I'm going to use the word squash here. Squash a protest that they don't agree with. It's a very sad day in Canada, and that's why I'm doing a podcast today, is because if I don't do a podcast and just like get this all out without any interruptions, because usually if I'm doing a Twitch stream, sometimes I'll even talk about this stuff, but you know, I'll be looking at the computer and like reading chat, saying hi to people, and I didn't want to be disturbed. I wanted to get this all out, so I'm not thinking about it later on during the stream, and I want to have it down on record of what's happened and my thoughts on it. Now, I should also say that arguably allegedly, I should say, the powers that have been approved apparently only go till mid-March. I don't know how true that is. I think we all know that a lot of the time when governments give themselves power, it's hard to get that power back. And even if you get a little bit of it back, or most of it back, some of it will stay around. And they have even talked about, the government has even, I should say the Liberal Party, the acting government in Canada, has even talked about the fact that some of the things that are coming with the emergency powers, I believe, such as freezing bank accounts and crypto accounts, and regulating crypto potentially, will stick around even after the emergency powers are gone. Which is obviously extremely dangerous and wrong, I guess is the easiest way to say it. But my mind's going towards the fact that you don't necessarily know who's going to be in charge tomorrow. Even if it's not Justin Trudeau, maybe it's somebody else. And even if Justin Trudeau doesn't end up using these powers, but he enables them, and he enables them for everybody down the line, it's bad news. It's bad news because then two things. One, the acting prime minister or the acting leader can just go ahead and just use those powers, even though they, it was meant for now, but in the future, I say we use them now. And I'm the prime minister, so you can't tell me no. The other problem is it takes a step forward for the government and a step backwards for our rights, in that, like I said, we don't get them back. So when the next crisis happens, or the next protest they don't like happens, and they push even harder to take away our rights, they are one step closer already. So they don't have to do as much work. They've already done it's step by step by step by step by step, not necessarily all at once. I can only hope, before I get into this whole thing, because I got videos, I got articles, I got opinions, and I hope you stick around for the whole thing. I got a feel-good story at the end, so don't worry. We're going to leave on a good note here, hopefully. But I can only hope that, our faith in government, our faith in law and order, and, the hopefulness in that things will go back to normal. Because you have to have some type of hope out there. I'm meeting a lot of people in my life that have zero hope. To the point where even if you mention a little bit of hope, they get like almost like resentful and like they attack you and stuff. You got to have a little bit of hope, even if that means that that little bit of hope is there to be shredded and torn and burnt and tossed aside by the powers that you are trusting, even if it's that little amount. You can only hope that the Prime Minister and the Parliament do not use their powers to do some really, really nasty stuff. We know they are already freezing the bank accounts of protest organizers. We know, apparently, from different accounts that I'm hearing, a lot of this is allegedly, that individuals, not myself, truthfully, I wish back, like even a couple weeks ago, I wish I had the money to donate to the cause. And I was thinking about it. And then the whole GoFundMe, for those that don't know, GoFundMe is dead to me. They took away $10 million of funding to the Freedom Convoy and just basically said, nope, not going to happen. So after that was, once there was a little bit of controversy around the funding and this news site, I'm just like, I'm just going to keep my money, like the little money that I have, and I'm just going to support in any way that I can. But we know that they're going after and freezing the accounts of people that have donated as little as $25, as little as $50 or $100 to the campaign. I'm saying it like it's a political cause. I mean, it's a political campaign, but it's more of a cause. It is a cause. It's a cause for freedom. It's arguable where the funds are going, who the funds are going to, and how they're being distributed and stuff, but arguably it's for the cause of freedom in Canada. I digress. So the bank accounts are being frozen already. We know that there was a massive hack on the new donation site that I was just talking about, Give, Send, Go, where we believe like I'm a part of a fucking group. I'm just an individual here, guys. I'm not a part of any group. I'm not part of any media conglomerate, not even independent news. I'm just some guy out here speaking his mind. I forgot what I was saying. Freezing bank accounts of journalists. I think I've read that. Anyways, real bad stuff. And like I said, those are the powers that are apparently going to stay forever now. Apparently. Again, can only hope they're lying, can only hope that they're just, fibbing or trying to make power moves and stuff, then it's not going to happen, but that's what they're saying. So I grew up, I'm in Southern Ontario right now. I've lived in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, all of my life. I've never lived outside of the GTA. I've traveled outside of the GTA. I've traveled internationally. I've traveled to other countries, very foreign countries. But I've always lived in the GTA. And grown up in the GTA, and I grew up with friends in high school and school, elementary school, from all different walks of life, all different places in the world. I had a friend from Egypt in high school. I knew people from India, Pakistan, England, Mark, I can't say his last name, but Scotland, the awesome accent. I knew people from all over the world, and that's the great thing about Canada, is it's such a melting pot of people that you really get a cultured experience growing up here, I feel. And I grew up liberal, not only in my thoughts and ideas, but also in the party that existed in Canada and exists today, the Liberal Party. As I believed that, you know, if you call yourself the Liberal Party, you're probably going to align yourself with liberal ideas, and as a liberal person, I like that. So, my first election in Canada that I was able to vote in, I voted Liberal. I think the next one I voted NDP, but that's besides the point. I definitely voted Liberal. My first election, and I grew up believing that liberal meant freedom. I thought it was synonymous with freedom. Freedom for all. And not just, oh, we're free, but like, you know, free healthcare for all. Or not like free healthcare, but like, you don't have to worry about going to the doctor because everyone's taking care of everybody here. I know that sounds very communistic, but it's like the liberal idea of no one gets left behind. But what I've come to see over the years, not only in my own country, but in many places in the world, even the idea, like I was saying about the free healthcare, liberal ideas generally come with massive government oversight, government overreach, government programs, which makes government bigger, creates jobs, good, potentially creates restrictions, good, bad, sort of everything, right? But the way I see liberals now, and the liberal mind is not the liberal mind. That's not the right way to say that at all. The way I see liberal thinking and the Liberal Party acting, that might be the way to say it, is just like I was saying, but more government intervention into our daily lives, to the point where, get into these mandates, where you are expected to get a vaccine for the sake of your community, for the sake of your neighbor, for the sake of your family. You're expected to follow the rules that they lay out. You're expected to, whatever they say, you do. I see I just see the Liberal Party as wanting more. And the thought that's coming into my head right now is the Star Wars, more. Because the more power that they have, the more that you can do, arguably. the more that you can do, the more change that you can have. And change isn't always good. I think that's taken me a long way, like the last 5 minutes, however long it's been to get to this point. But change isn't always good. And I think that's where my thinking with this liberal, like I grew up liberal, but change isn't always good. I grew up loving this country and still do to many degrees. Which is why the idea of changing it more and extremely in any way doesn't sound good to me. It's kind of scary. And that's kind of what I see the Liberal Party and the liberals as now, is always wanting to change no matter what. Because the liberal idea will always change. Whatever the new liberal idea is, that's what they're going to latch on to, and that's what's going to become their doctrine. Whether it's every year, every 10 years, doesn't matter. Whereas what I see conservatives and the conservative mindset as now is, I like this country. Hell, I love this country. And I want to keep this country the way it is to keep it awesome. And sure, and I'm talking to me here, sure, we as people, and hopefully the Conservative Party and whoever, the conservatives in this country, are not so conservative that they're stuck in the mud, that they have no idea the changing of the tides, so to speak. Even if they're old, stuck in the mud conservatives, there can be new, flexible conservatives that can share multiple viewpoints while still having a core of, I love this country, I don't want to change this country, and I don't want to control the people of this country. I want to help the people of this country. So it's almost like, and I don't know if it's just me and my perspective and my ideas of what liberalism is and what conservatism is, and what my idea of the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, or previously the Progressive Conservative Party in Canada was, and the leaders that led them at the time. But or if it's actually how it's been, and that there's been those changes to the Liberal Party in the last 10 years, like I was saying, potentially, because I was born in 1986, so I've been around, but I haven't necessarily been caring that much about specifically Canadian politics. Unfortunately, that's been my biggest regret now in the Freedom Convoy movement. Heck, I was even a part of Occupy Toronto, part of the Occupy Wall Street, but Occupy Toronto. And even then I wasn't too into Canadian politics, because I'm like, Canadian, it feels too safe. Like, we're like, it's rocky and stuff, like there's stuff going on, but it felt like there's no way Canadians are gonna let something bad happen, like what's happening in America and elsewhere that we were seeing. Boy, was I wrong. Oh man, I hope I made a little bit of sense there, guys. I'm gonna get into some videos and some articles now. Some to do with the protests, some to do with the Emergencies Act vote in Parliament. But we're going to start with an article that was actually written in 2014. I believe Justin Trudeau came to power in 2016. So this was written essentially 2 years before he came into power. And it was a Huffington Post article that predicted today. It predicted that Justin Trudeau would become a dictator in Canada. Which sounds crazy to say that in 2014 they were able to see it. And, I wasn't able to see it, or people weren't able to see it. But let's jump into this article here, and I'll read a little bit of it here for you. Why Canada Will Become a Dictatorship Under Trudeau is the title. The subtitle is, or the summary is, the leader of the party does what he wants, when he wants, and no one dares question him. Would a Prime Minister Trudeau arbitrarily whip the vote and outlaw certain moral questions? Could Prime Minister Trudeau be trusted to make decisions for the good of the country, not just for his personal self-worth? Would Trudeau call in the police to enforce his vision? Let's hope we never have the opportunity to ask those questions, is how the article begins. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. This is the man who admitted he, quote, admires China's basic dictatorship. It wasn't just a sarcastic comment. He seriously said that he admires the dictatorship because... Oh, I'm too far down here. He admires the dictatorship because they can get things done quickly. And it's becoming clear that Trudeau not only admires the dictatorship, he runs the Liberal Party like one too. How else can one explain the police-enforced acclamation of Andrew Leslie as the Liberal candidate of Orleans? Even with hundreds of Liberals attending the meeting to show their support for another candidate and former Trudeau leadership rival, it was clear from the beginning that Leslie was Trudeau's hand-picked favorite and certainly wouldn't be stopped by pesky processes like democracy. Just like the imagery of Trudeau's chosen candidate being selected with police intervention is scary. It shows Trudeau doesn't just admire Chinese dictatorship, he would practice it. He would practice one if he had the chance. So getting a little bit further here. But surely Trudeau would loosen his grip on his caucus colleagues once they had been elected, wouldn't he? Unfortunately, no. The Liberal caucus randomly learned one morning early last year that their leader had come up with a new diktat that all Liberals would be expected, no, required, to vote pro-choice. When Trudeau's pathetic attempted defense that they were, quote, the party of the charter, obviously missing those small sections about freedom of conscience and religion, agitated more than a few Liberal MPs, he attempted to invent some weird grandfathering rule, but then he went back on it too. The result is that the Liberal MPs who dared question the diktat of Trudeau are being punished. Those who dare disagree have already been punished, resigned, or indicated that they will not seek another term in office, at least not under the iron fist of Trudeau. So that's in 2014. I'm going to scroll a little bit more here, see. The Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau. Here we go. The Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau has become a dictatorship. The leader of that party does what he wants when he wants, and no one dares question him. Now that we know that Trudeau runs his party like a dictatorship, we must ask ourselves, is there any indication he would do the same as the leader of Canada? It just basically repeats the initial part about let's hope we never have the the opportunity to ask those questions. So it's a bit anti... HuffPost there. And where am I going to show you? It's 2014. I can't show you where, but it was 2014 apparently. So the signs were on the wall, and as the article says, the Liberal Party is basically just filled with people who agree with Justin Trudeau, don't necessarily have their own ideas about these things, like it said about the pro-choice, and I'm sure about many other things. Like I watched the vote on the Emergencies Act yesterday, and I don't think I saw, and I don't think I read one Liberal vote nay against the Emergencies Act. Shout out to Mike Morris, though. Mike Morris, Green Party MP, standing up against his party leader. I believe it's Elizabeth May is the leader of the Green Party. And Mike Morris, standing up for freedom. Small party. I think they only have 2-3 seats in the House, which is like literally there's three people of the same party. It's like this person, me, that person. And the leader voted yes. Mike Morris, nay. I take my hat off to you, good sir. Trudeau has said the new measures, the new Emergency Act, will be targeted and temporary. Targeted and temporary are the new words that you can expect to hear over and over and over again to try to soften the blow to the civil liberties that we have lost in this. It's very similar to what they had said about vaccines. I'm not trying to debate vaccines here. All I care about is the choice, is the freedom to choose and the right to choose. But it's sounding very similar. It's sounding like a very similar talking point. Safe and effective. Targeted and temporary. And if we know anything from history, we know that temporary powers don't go away overnight. I can go to historical evidence, but I think the most current obvious one is the Patriot Act and the National Defense Authorization Act in America, the NDAA, which enabled the TSA and many other things to molest U.S. citizens and other travelers when they're traveling in America, and allowed wiretapping to happen and a lot of other things that are very bad and very illegal, but now legal under the pretense of protection and safety. Just remember, regardless of if what I'm saying here is true or not, whatever comes down the pipe will be pitched as a good thing. They're not going to pitch it to the public as a bad thing. It's going to be pitched as a good thing. So just keep your eyes open for the next good thing that you hear coming from the government, because it's probably not going to be a good thing. Moving on, we got a lot more clips to watch here. So, over the weekend, the protest was moved out of Ottawa forcefully with hundreds of police, some in uniform, some in actual normal uniforms, most, a lot, in nameless military garb that simply had a number. No name, no badge, just a number. And Liberal MP, I can't remember this guy's name, I think his name's Mark something. I hate that I have to know these people's names now. Says that the officers used a lot of restraint in dealing with the protesters, which included having horses come in to try to gain some ground with the protesters, and ended up trampling two of the protesters, a man and an elderly woman. And I'm going to show you a little bit of the video now. Sorry, just clicking around to get the video. Let's do it. And oh, wait. Should probably be wearing my headphones so that I can actually listen and not interrupt the audio for you guys, because I know a lot of people are just going to be listening to this. Some people will be watching, but little secret there for everybody that's just watching. Oh man, jokes, guys. We got jokes here, even when things are getting a little too serious for me. Okay, this is what restraint looks like.
At times, efforts to assault police officers, and that, despite all of that, we saw a minimum use of force. I believe that when you survey the conduct of law enforcement over the last number of days, what you have seen is restraint. I mean, take a look at the way that the police carried themselves throughout the course of dealing with the illegal occupation here in Ottawa. There was a degree of professionalism. Focus, despite the fact that there was an emotionally charged atmosphere, despite the many provocations and intimidation, and at times efforts to assault police officers, and that, despite all of that, we saw a minimum use of force.
So that's their idea of minimal use of force, which, compared to tanks on the street and military on the ground, could be argued. And that's just one of the videos. I don't know how many videos I've got of that. And you saw a little bit of the video of the horse trampling. I should probably pull that up for you guys to see the full thing. But clearly they were done with this protest. They didn't want it there anymore. And they got rid of it. Dissent is dead in Canada. So it's almost like if you stand out on the corner of the street right now with a sign, might be a problem. I might do that tomorrow, by the way. Not tomorrow, 2 days. 2 days from now, I think. I might do that, just to see what happens. And just to hopefully fucking talk to some people. But I digress here. Let's get to another video here. We're going to get to some talks from the House of Commons, from some people debating whether or not this Emergency Act should happen. You've heard a lot of my words here. Now hear from our elected officials.
Canadians cheering all of this on must really consider how they would view these measures if the cause was one they liked and if the government was one they didn't. If their perspective changes, the unjust moral implications are blindingly clear. Much has been said of conservatives and law and order. Let me explain my view. I believe in the rule of law and in freedom. So I'm for individual rights, limited government, personal responsibility, and social cooperation. I'm against squashing dissent, authoritarian policies, tyranny even if it's popular, and using police to achieve these ends. The CCLA says protest is how people in a democracy express and share their political messages. Many protests are destructive. It's possible for protests to be both destructive and peaceful and nonviolent. Destructive protests, while often unlawful, can be the most effective way of raising awareness. Through history, countless wrongs have been lawful and justified by governments and citizens. Basic rights and freedoms have been illegal. It's never the side in favor of the invasive, unforgiving, unyielding power of the state and against the sovereignty and freedom of individuals over themselves and their lives that is right. One day, we'll be judged for this, and Conservatives will be on the right side. I hope every MP will be too. Yeah.
So she says some really interesting things in that, for instance, a protest can be two things. It can be disruptive and peaceful, which I truly believe that's the perfect definition for this freedom convoy. Is disruptive, yes, 100%. That was the goal. But peaceful, which was also the goal. And what does peaceful mean? Now, we're getting into a weird time in history where even some people will say words are violence. AKA not peaceful. So, but truly, a peaceful protest, this is what a peaceful protest looks like. No one's breaking any windows. No one's assaulting anybody. Obviously, there's no attempts to, these are not my ideas. I'm just saying, like, nothing like this happened, so we can't say it. So, like, assassinations, anything like kidnappings, nothing like that was planned or happened. Peaceful. There were no riots. It was arguably, and I hate using this term, even though it was used as the term for the protest I participated in, arguably it was an occupation. That much could be said. Arguably, it was an occupation of Ottawa, the capital of our country, which is where the laws are made, which is where protests should happen. If they're gonna happen anywhere, they should happen in the capital. And they were squashed. And they were squashed even though they were peaceful. And it only got violent when the police showed up in force. En masse, looking to squash it. Before that, bouncy castles, barbecues, nightly concerts. I'm telling you, I watched too much of the live streams from this thing, and I doubt any MP watched more. I don't want to say that. I don't want to brush people with brushes. I would be interested to know how many hours of protest, or how many times they went down there because they live in the city, but how many hours of protest and live stream footage they watched. If that even would have changed anything in their minds, because I've watched too much Canadian parliamentary debate over the last month, specifically over the last week. Too much, and it's rough. My biggest problem, I'll say it, definitely for the Liberals. I see it for the Conservatives. I see it for a lot of politicians. But I don't know how stuff gets done in the House of Commons. Like, everybody seems stuck in the mud. Like, everyone's just there being like, this is my point and I'm sticking to it. And it's like, everybody has that point. So then why are we talking here? Why are we talking here? In my opinion, like, it obviously we get clips like what we just saw, which is the good thing. But it's like, if they're stuck in the mud, you're not going to change their mind, regardless of the amazing words that you say, or whatever fucking authority you have. I'm trying my best not to swear during this podcast, but I just let that one slip. So they're stuck in the mud just saying the same thing. And my biggest problem with the Liberals right now is they're not answering questions. They avoid questions. Literally, the interim leader for the opposition was bringing up a point just before the vote last night, and the a Liberal minister for the government just said, "Mr. Speaker, it's time to vote," and sat down. Just dismissed the whole idea. The whole thing is a bit laughable, but again, at least we get some of these amazing speeches, arguably amazing speeches from Parliament here. I'm not going to play all of the next one here because they're a little long, but I'm going to play the part that's pretty important. If it's the one that I'm thinking of, yes. So this guy here, Michael Chong, by the way, that was Shannon Stubbs MP. Shannon Stubbs MP is this woman here that gave that powerful speech. And so now we're going to move to Michael Chong. And Michael Chong says there are three, I'm going to paraphrase the first little bit and then I'm going to cut into halfway. He says there are three parameters to invoking the Emergencies Act, and arguably, and the government has to prove, they've met all three of these in order to invoke it. And I almost called him Tommy Chong. Michael Chong says they've met two out of the three. So the first two are pretty obvious, and I'm not here to necessarily convince you of the first part. I'm here to not convince you, but I'm here to show you why it should not be enacted. So you can watch the whole thing. It's on my Twitter if you want.
Thank you, Mr. The third criterion that must be satisfied is the situation, quote, cannot be effectively dealt with under any other law of Canada, end quote. It's important to note that the Act uses the word effectively rather than ideally. The government made an announcement about the public order emergency on the afternoon of February 14th, but the promulgation of the three orders in council affecting the powers took several days. The blockades ended at Windsor on February 13th, Surrey February 14th, Coutts February 15th, and Emerson February 16th. It's clear that the border blockades were effectively dealt with under the existing laws of Canada and not under the Emergency Powers Act. Under the Emergencies Act powers, I should say. Here in Ottawa, while Emergency Act powers were used, they were not needed. Chris Lewis said exactly that yesterday. He said there was a lack of law enforcement and a lack of police officers, not a lack of laws to enforce. He said making arrests, seizing trucks, towing, cordoning off the city, putting up checkpoints, and getting thousands of additional officers to assist the Ottawa Police could all have been done under the existing laws of Canada. He's a former commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, the largest police force in the province of Ontario. Furthermore, it's clear that the Emergencies Act powers allowing the government to seize financial accounts could have been done under existing law. Ontario Attorney General Doug Downey did exactly that on February 10th when he obtained an order under Section 490.8 of the Criminal Code to freeze access to millions of dollars donated through the platform Give, Send, Go. Lawyer Paul Champ also did exactly that on February 17th when he obtained a Mareva injunction under existing common law that froze millions of dollars, including cryptocurrency, raised for the convoy protests. These actions by the Attorney General and by Paul Champ were done under the existing laws of Canada and also were done with court approval, unlike the Emergencies Act powers to freeze accounts without court approval that this government has now claimed for itself. These emergency powers may not, in fact, pass the Oakes test with respect to the proportionality or the requirement that they minimally impair rights and freedoms. The government has not met the requirement of the Act that the situation cannot be effectively dealt with under any other law of Canada. and therefore, Madam Speaker, I cannot support the motion. And I would add, if the House supports the motion, it might be giving government powers it likely does not lawfully have under the Act. And while I cannot support the motion, it's clear that the blockades in Ottawa and at the border were unlawful, illegal, and in many aspects criminal.
So he gets on. I can't remember how he ends it there, but essentially that's what I wanted to show you. And I sort of, like, the blockades, definitely agreed they were illegal. They were a protest. They were a sign of protest. I would say that probably the right thing to do in those cases is to arrest everybody and then let the court decide if it's legal or not. It's probably the way it should have been done if they wanted it to, but, you know, it's hard, like, it's not the police job to make up the laws. It's just their job to enforce the laws. As he was saying, it's not a lack of laws to enforce. It's a lack of people to do it. And the former police commissioner said that all of this could be done without the Emergencies Act. They said that they could freeze, the Attorney General said that they could freeze bank accounts without the Emergencies Act. The problem is, under the without the Emergencies Act, you have to get a warrant. You have to get a court to approve that. And that's difficult, because you actually have to prove things. Whereas now, they can just, for all I know, literally, for all I know, talking shit right here, and again, I'm trying not to swear, but talking the shit like I am right now about what's going on. I could wake up tomorrow, try to go buy gas, try to go buy lunch, tap my card, insert my card, whatever, and it says, declined. And I go to my bank account and it says, you have money. Maybe there's a little, like, icon, like a little lock or something. Go to the bank and have to talk about it. It's already happening to people. It's already happening to people that donated money, that have visited the protests. It's already happened. So that's Michael Chong there, speaking in Parliament yesterday. And here we have Raquel Dancho. And this is talking about trust. Trust in government. From somebody in government. I love how I'm doing the same action that she's doing there. From somebody in government here. And the Canadian government, the Liberal Party, is basically saying there are measures in place so you can trust that everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be on the up and up. Don't worry. And this is what Raquel Dancho has to say about that.
Just trust us. There's parliamentary oversight, as if that means anything. This parliament asked 4 times for those lab documents from the Winnipeg lab with all those shenanigans going on with the Chinese Communist Party. We never got them. Nope. He prorogued parliament. He called a snap election both times to get out of scandals of his own making. And he thinks that we're going to trust that parliamentary oversight is going to be enough to keep his government in check. I don't think so, Mr. And
I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I'm not the most aware of the 4 times that she was mentioning, but the fact that there is that divide in the House means you definitely can't trust them. You already shouldn't trust politicians more than you can prove you can trust them. But the fact that they're saying as a parliament, we've told you we need this, we want this, and you've been denied 4 times, should tell you something. So this is an interesting video. I didn't even know that Trudeau had a half-brother. But apparently this is his half-brother here. And he is talking about his half-brother. Come on now. Oh, why are you doing this to me now? It was working so good before. Let's see if I can just reload it here real quick. And there we go.
Been accused of blockading Canada's democracy. Yes. Why does he want to seemingly divide Canada? Have you been able to work it out?
Well, I mean, I can have my own kind of philosophies on it, but it seems to be that's the script. That is, you know, he is representing a pharmaceutical agenda and a World Economic Forum, Bill and Melinda Gates kind of agenda that is decidedly un-Canadian, and it wasn't ever voted on. Canadians never voted for vaccine mandates. And, you know, we've been disconnected. And this trucker convoy, most importantly, has created a sense, an opportunity for unity and for people to come together. And make no mistake, what's going on in Ottawa isn't hateful, and swastikas are not flying on street corners. That was one photo that would never in a crowd, that was cherry picked and then retweeted by the mainstream pharmaceutical media that just pushed this narrative to try and slander the entire movement. But the reality on the streets, I've been talking to these truckers, I've been talking to people, they're cleaning up the streets, crime is down, they're sharing, there's community, there's dancing, there's high vibration, there's music, and they just want our freedom back. They want the true north, strong and free is what Canada is known as.
You know, these are good, honest people. You know, and I think there's a real irony on a couple of levels, Kyle, and I want to put both of them.
So that's just his brother talking about, his half-brother talking about his experience with the protest, his experience talking with the protesters, and his opinion of why his half-brother is doing what he's doing. Now, he mentioned a couple of things there that we will be getting into right now. Excuse me. And that's the idea of elite capture. Elite capture. What is elite capture? Elite capture is when one entity, as the term would imply, captures, takes on, assumes responsibility of, takes control of, is trying to think of other ways to say it. Used by a larger entity, comes in and uses this smaller entity to do its bidding. And the idea of elite capture is that, let's say the political elite capture is the idea that these politicians, these elected politicians, some not even the elected ones, but just working for the elected politicians, potentially, who are there supposed to be serving the people, Canadians in this case, their constituents, and serving the best for their country, actually, maybe, possibly, are serving somebody else and are pushing laws and agendas from these people, from these organizations that are not their own, are not Canadian, and go against a lot of the things that we stand for and that we hold dear in our country. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about, it's crazy that this is like a mainstream thing now. I used to be a lot more into politics than I am now. It's been an interesting road for myself. But there is a group called the World Economic Forum, whose chairman is a guy named Klaus Schwab. Klause. His last name always makes me crazy. Schwab. Schwab. I think that's how it is. Anyways, this guy and this group are a group of elite, global elite from around the world who have come together and put together ideas about what they think, how they believe the world should be in the future. Fine. I'm talking about that right now. I think the world should be free. I think, we all have these ideas. Problem is, differences. The people in this group are not just people like myself, just normal, everyday citizens, people. They're heads of states. They're heads of corporations. They're heads of nations. And they might hold positions of power within our governments, within your government, if you're outside of Canada, not to serve the Canadian people, but to serve their own career, their own advancement into this global club that requires its members to say things, to believe things, to think things. And I'm going to show you a couple clips here. I know I'm getting a little long now. I'm going to show you a couple clips here. One of those people that belongs to the World Economic Forum is Justin Trudeau, and has belonged there for a long time. To the point where even Klaus Schwab, the leader of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, has spoke very, very, very highly of him. So Joe Rogan put out a podcast last weekend with a guy named Majid Nawaz, in which they played a clip that where Klaus Schwab literally says him and his organization, the WEF, World Economic Forum, have penetrated the Parliament of Canada and many other governments. Okay. So let's listen to this. This is from the Joe Rogan podcast.
They call it on their own website, they call it the Great Reset. That's what they say themselves.
Yeah, that's a bizarre thing to do, to openly... Why do you think they openly discuss it that way? And openly... Because the Great Reset has always been this gigantic conspiracy theory among the online folks. Like, this is all part of the Great Reset. Well, when he wrote a fucking book called The Great Reset, you're like, hey, man, shouldn't you be hiding this?
And in 2017 at Harvard, he's saying, we're going to basically... all of these world leaders will penetrate their cabinets with our young global leaders. He's open about this. He's open. Blair's open. During the Iraq War, Blair tried to bring in ID cards in Britain. He failed. Now he's back, and he's trying to bring in digital ID during COVID, right? So they're open about it.
So this is going to be this never-ending process to slowly move the goalposts
towards more and more authoritarianism. Checkpoint society. It's all there. They told us this.
People have to realize this, right? This is important.
Yeah.
That wasn't the clip I thought it was going to be. Damn it. I mean, that's a little bit of what the clip was. The clip I was hoping it would say literally Klaus Schwab talking about Trudeau being captured. But still, that's a very interesting, very important video there, which he literally is saying, you know, he's that's the plan. Now we're kind of getting into the weeds a little bit here, and I apologize. I don't mean to do that, but that is, you have to. So we've seen the historical why stuff like this has happened with the FLQ and the Quebec and Trudeau's father and stuff like that. We've seen what's enacted right now, the reason why arguments for and against the invocation of this Emergencies Act. And now we're getting into the why. Why might this be important to bring down the pipe right now?
I'm not just talking about government. I'm also talking about people that have accepted a certain narrative and find that there's a lot of other people that are along with them in this same narrative. And they have these media pylons, like social media pylons, where they'll attack people and, like you, call you an anti-vaxxer even though you've been vaccinated. The same thing with Eric Clapton. They were angry at Eric Clapton because he spoke openly about his very extreme vaccine side effects. Just speaking openly as a person who was vaccinated, and they called him a vile anti-vaxxer.
Well, the question is why, right? And it's to shut debate down.
Yes.
Now, why would you want to shut debate down? I think there's a deeper point here, and that is that we've just come out of a time where, for a long time, moral and, let's just say, relativism, whether it's moral or otherwise, relativism, this idea that truth is relative, this idea that that it's all subjective, that everything is personal experience, that's being promoted. Yeah, there's no such thing as reality, whether it comes down to defining a man and woman. We spoke about this last time I was here with well, it was there in California, but with Sam as well. We spoke about the trans debate and man and woman. Whether it's defining a man and a woman, whether it's anything else, this idea that actually truth is all personally subjective.
Right.
When you promote the idea that there's no such thing as truth, and when you shut down debate that is seeking truth, not that it claims truth, but is seeking it, when you shut that debate down in aid of this idea that truth is relative, like those, for example, who now know the science that the COVID vaccination doesn't stop or doesn't stop infection or transmission and doesn't reduce it beyond 12 weeks. The booster shot, by the way, is 8 weeks. But having known that, and they still insist on vaccine passports, it's no longer about seeking the truth for them. The truth is relative and it serves a purpose. What happens when you do that? When there's no such thing as truth, you can't define reality. And when you can't define reality, the only thing that matters is power. You're a father. Now, we're your child.
That is a very, very powerful point there. When there's no more truth, the only thing that matters is power. And so now we're getting into the weeds here in Canada, where it's like, what's true? Are the truckers racist? Are they white nationalists? Are they trying to overthrow the government? Or is the government actually taking away our freedoms? They've enacted the Emergencies Act. There must be an emergency. But my friend Billy Bob down the street went to the protest, and he's definitely not a white nationalist. He doesn't have a racist bone in his body. What's the truth here?
Children who can't reason, like my kid's 5. I mean, his reasoning abilities are great, but he's 5, right? It's why you say to the child, because I said so, do it. It's good for you. Because they don't know how to reason yet. Yeah. And you try, and if something's too complex, you say, I'll explain another time, but right now you have to listen to your father. Don't do this. When there's no such thing as truth, because everything's relative, the only thing that matters is power, because power gets to define reality. And this brings us to the hybrid war we're in right now. And that's why people that are in power, who are seeking a specific outcome from the world that we're in, want to shut debate down. What they're not interested in is seeking truth. What they're interested in is shutting that debate down, because power steps into that void when reason no longer exists and gets to define reality for you from up above. And it's why it's so important in a dictatorship that the only thing you have left when all your power is taken from you is the truth. And if you read Orwell, if you look at 1984, it's why he spends so much time talking about how the power he was writing about in that fictional account is attempting to redefine reality, redefine the past, redefine the future. Because if you can't hold on to reality, you have no premise to scrutinize the government for whether they're telling you the truth or not. And it is a war in that sense, hybrid war. So
what he's saying there is that once you control the narrative, that's it. Once you control the past, once you control the present, the future is yours.
Information in that war becomes your most powerful weapon. Now, most people don't have the privilege of researching these debates, foreign policy, war on terror, COVID, whatever it is. People don't have the privilege because they're working 9 to 5, a minimum wage, and they're hungry, and they're just busy trying to live and survive. What they normally do is they outsource their thinking on where the truth lies to trusted voices in the media. So it's why it becomes so important to manipulate the media, so that those trusted voices that people are looking to are no longer giving them at least the best understanding of the truth they have, but are also peddling the agenda of power. When you're in a situation like that, it becomes difficult to define reality, and therefore difficult to challenge government on whether or not they are sticking to their promises, because everything gets shifted. Everything's relative. The Overton window keeps moving. The goalposts keep shifting.
So that's the problem, is the goalposts keep shifting from the COVID lockdowns and the mandates to now the state of emergency in Ottawa, to the Emergencies Act. They say it's going to end in mid-March, and if it doesn't, that's going to be crazy. But again, like I said, there's probably still going to be things that exist afterwards. And then after they're here, once things are implemented, they're almost impossible to get rid of without crazy amount of effort. So it's very important to not let things get into law, into practice that you don't want ahead of time. My mind's a bit of a flood right now, but let's push through here. Let's push through. That was an amazing podcast, by the way. You really gotta. That's probably one of the greatest podcasts I've listened to. Let's say 3,000 podcasts in my life. No joke. 3,000 podcasts. Most of them Joe Rogan. That's one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Top 5, top 10, easy. Easy. So definitely got to check that out. I will put the link in the description for you all to check out. Moving on, though. Getting to the end of it here, guys. Again, I don't know what my purpose of this podcast was, but I'm so glad I did it. Because it marks a time in my life. It marks a time in history, and I think I've done a good job of kind of collecting my thoughts and feelings, opinions, and clips to support and show. And I hope you've learned something. This next video is probably going to get me a copyright claim on YouTube or whatever, but it's a good video. I posted it on my Instagram today, but it shows a bit more of the police brutality and also about the Canadian spirit here. So hope you enjoy it. I'm going to see if I can rejig it a little bit so you can actually see the whole thing, because it's a vertical video, unfortunately. There's the top, there's the bottom. Okay, a little bit more maybe here. E, like that, like that, like that. That maybe it'll be all right. All right, let's try it.
Hey, look at his face. Hey, hey, hey. Don't cut this hand in here. My hands are in the air. On their own people. Hey, look at it.
Yeah. Oh, wait. No, I posted the full thing on my Instagram. That's right. I think at least. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to go to my Instagram. I hope you've been enjoying the episode, though, guys. I'm not 100% sure what episode this is of the podcast, but... oh yeah, this is the longer one here. Perfect. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. Let's go back here. And if you are interested, I wrote a fucking novel. Oh, I swore again. Ooh. Ooh, I swore. Ooh. So I did write a bit of a novel for this post. So if you're interested at all in what I have to say, you can go check it out. But let's watch this here, and then I got one more video to show you, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Hey, look at his face. Hey, hey, hey. Don't cut this hand in here. My hands are in the air. On their own people.
That's the woman that got trampled. Just one thing I'm going to read here. We need to make liberty and justice the things Canada is known for now. rather than poutine and hockey, regardless of how awesome they are. So with that, I would like to say thank you to Justin Trudeau for giving us this opportunity to come together to figure out how to save our rights and our country from the grip of a totalitarian disguised as a good-to-do choir boy. I started writing this thinking I was going to end up sad and depressed, and I think this has made me more hopeful than ever. We need more voices. No, all your voices to be heard, big or small. 1 million followers or 3. Your voice is important, can change the world. If you let it. And you should let it. And arguably that's what I'm trying to do right here. Positive vibes, right on, man. So the video I'm going to end off today with is a video, so the protest is over. Main big protest in Ottawa is over. The blockades are gone. But the spirit remains. And so I believe it was yesterday that a former military serviceman in Canada started his journey from British Columbia at the west coast of our country to walk across Canada to Ottawa. So this is the video of him crossing Canada, or starting his walk across Canada. And I can only hope that this video and this guy and this movement gets really, really big, and when he shows up to places, you know, everyone's like stoked, and you know, there's huge celebrations. People start walking with him like they do in this video. But my fear is that, especially during the time of the Emergencies Act powers, I'm assuming protesting is going to become more and more illegal in Canada. So God help us here. For 4,395 kilometer march from Vancouver to Ottawa in solidarity with the Freedom Convoy and working Canadians to bring an end to the overbearing government mandates. And his name is James Top. Thank you, James. Thank you so much for keeping the message going of freedom and love, and inspiring Canadians to continue the fight for their rights. And that's it. I think I got all I want to say out of the way. There's obviously always more I could say. But I think that's good enough. I'll be honest, I've cried a lot in the last couple weeks. Mostly for positive, arguably, reasons. You know, seeing Canadians come together and support one another, and be at the convoys, you know, on the overpasses as the trucks are going to Ottawa. So hopeful. So inspiring. So awesome to see. But, I wouldn't consider myself a big crier. I'm a crier, not a big crier, but you know. But it always surprises me when it hits me, and it almost hit me here, practically hit me here, for not that video, but the second last video. Because that video kind of just shows the reality of what we're up against here, is that it's not just the, you know, Justin Trudeau's power and stuff now. It's the fact that now we have the police that apparently have no qualms about squashing any dissent that is deemed by their leader, Justin Trudeau, as unacceptable. We should have known from that first fringe minority unacceptable views speech from Justin Trudeau that things were going to get really bad, but I don't think any of us could have ever predicted. I don't think any of us wanted to even predict that something like this could have happened. And wouldn't be 100% truthful if I didn't say this theory. I'm a believer in the idea that conspiracy is real. A conspiracy can be real. That's what I'm saying here. Any conspiracy. Pick it. Could be. Who knows? My ultimate fear, even if it's outlandish and unreasonable and stuff, is that maybe this is all the whole protest movement and everything, as awesome as it is, was started and created by and propped up by powers that be, whoever they are, in order for these emergencies powers to happen. Or potentially this might be the better conspiracy, the more realistic theory, as the politician was saying, it's not a lack of laws, it's a lack of policing. And potentially Trudeau told the mayor of Ottawa, don't do anything, let it get out of control, and let me pull the Emergency Act lever. Who knows? We might not ever know. But I thank you for listening. This has been first podcast of 2022, and hopefully not the last podcast of 2022. I do have some podcasts lined up that I'm meaning to do. Just so busy. I make myself so busy, which is good and bad. But I've got podcasts I would like to do with guests, not just solo casts like I've been doing this one and the last couple ones, but World War II and stuff, which I definitely recommend. If you are interested in World War II at all, you have to go listen to my epic podcast where I read, I think it was like 11 books in 3 months or something like that, all about the Marines. It was awesome, and I think I did a good job of kind of relaying the information in that podcast, just like I hope I did a good job of relaying the information and my opinions and thoughts and feelings in this podcast. I know I stumble over my words and say a lot, but I'm quite impressed with myself that I swore, I think, a total of 3 times, maybe 4 times. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know in the comments how many times I swore, if you can remember. Maybe go back and listen. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of the podcast. Let me know what topics you'd like to hear me talk about on solo casts, guests you would like me to have on the podcast, and what your thoughts and feelings are on the state of Canada right now with the Emergencies Act. Thank you for watching. I am NickDiazOfNauts, and I'll see you next time, or I'll see you in Twitch chat. Oof out.